Hello, BookTube. I have some new arrivals for you. These are books, hardcover and paperback, that were opened off camera that are either out now or are coming out sometime in the next couple of months, and on a wide variety of subjects. So a lot of these will probably interest some of you more than they interest me. Uh, so this will be sort of an occasion for you to know that they're out there. We'll go through them together. We'll preview them together. And if you want to ask your library to buy a copy or pre-order one online, you'll know what you're talking about. So the first one is an anthology. This is from Monthly Review Press, and this is Anne Braden Speaks. Once upon a time, well-known figure in the civil rights movement. This is an anthology. I don't have any kind of a sell sheet for it, so I'll just read from the back of the book, just like you would in the store. This is a finished paperback. I believe this is what it will look like in your store. Anne Braden, who was born in 1924 and died in 2006, was raised to be a Southern belle. Instead, she became a revolutionary who helped shape the self-understanding of the entire civil rights movement. From her earliest days as a trade unionist in the radical wing of the Congress of Industrial Organizations, she had been one of the small handful of white Southerners willing to take stand against Jim Crow in the 1950s. In this volume, editor and union organizer Ben Wilkins gives readers a representative collection of her writings, her speeches, her letters, her nonfiction occasional stuff. I don't know. I haven't actually done any kind of a search. I don't know how much of Anne Braden is, for instance, memorialized on YouTube. I don't know if you can call up one of her speeches on YouTube. If you can, that was the best way to experience this brain. But this is the next best way. I believe this is the first anthology of its kind. So I don't know when it's coming out, but this is a finished paperback, so I bet it's out soon. I bet a lot of these, the ones that aren't specifically marked to the contrary, will probably either be out already or are coming out as September releases. But this next one is a novel. This is by Joseph Peterson, and it's called Memorandum from the Iowa Cloud Appreciation Society. Kind of a weird cover there. And again, I don't have a sheet for this, but we'll just read from the back here. When his girlfriend Rosemary asks him about his life, Jim Moore, a successful salesman whose territory covers the entire United States and part of Canada, doesn't think there's anything to say to her, and so he says, quote, nothing happened. Or maybe he doesn't know how to put it all in words, or maybe he doesn't want to. Stuck in an airport because of blizzard conditions. Some of you are going to have to Google that. Certainly future watchers of this video, if there are any, will need to Google that. Well, that was a climactic condition where snow, which is also something you're going to need to Google, happened in such ferocity and such intensity over a short amount of time and in such accumulations that it could actually cause lots of problems. It could strand cars on highways, it could shut down transportation, it could close airports. So our main character is stuck in an airport because of blizzard conditions. And packed into a crowded terminal with other travelers, Moore has come to believe that his life is not worth reporting about because it has largely been a life lived without incident. However, chance encounters with a yoga instructor, a man traveling to bury his mother, and an enigmatic woodsman reawaken long-dormant emotions about his father's suicide and cause Jim to newly reflect on his own life and on a memorandum that he later discovered in his deceased father's papers, which lists all the names of the clouds, in which Jim now, from time to time, recants as if it were his own private Kaddish to memorialize his lost father. Okay. Not 100% sure that recants is used correctly in that sense. Like the Pilgrims in Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales, who passed the time telling stories while stranded in the Tabard Inn. So the Pilgrims never hit the road in the Canterbury Tales? Okay. This novel tells the tale of a traveling salesman and what really happened over the course of his 46 years. So it's not a long thing. It sounds really good. And it underscores a point that Thomas Mallon makes in his great book, A Book of One's Own. Thomas Mallon is now a historical novelist, but he did a nonfiction work years and years ago about keeping a private journal called A Book of One's Own. And he has, there are a whole bunch of great one-liners in that book. It is an endlessly rereadable book. But one of the best lines in the book is when he reaffirms what every journal keeper knows, which is that nothing, in fact, never happens. So there's no sense in looking back at life and saying nothing happened. But anyway, this next one I think we've seen before. Might have been in one of these new arrivals videos. This is the finished copy of Douglas Rushkoff's book, Survival of the Richest. Escape fantasies of the tech billionaires. But I don't know if we actually did see this, so we can go over it briefly again, because it is fascinating. Whether we went through it previously or not, I have now read it, and it is a fascinating little book. In 2007, here, let's hold it up like that. In 2017, 5 billionaires summoned media theorist and digital economist Douglas Rushkoff to a remote desert resort for a private consult. The topic, in their words, the event, capital E. The coming catastrophe they have no capacity or intent to prevent. Specifically, they wanted to know where to build their bunkers or how to maintain control of security workers once money was obsolete. We always suspected, but now we know. The tech elite have a plan to survive the apocalypse. They want to leave us all behind. In a new book that expands on his viral Medium essay, Rushkoff traces the origins of the mindset in the science and technology through its current expression in Mission to Mars, Isolated Bunkers, and the Metaverse. And the mindset is also capitalized here. And what it refers to is, in this book, is a mindset common to the mega rich that this author interviewed or learned about, which is the idea that we may have single-handedly exacerbated or even wholesale caused a lot of the problems that are going to cause the world to end, but we want no part of the result. We are not going to be responsible for our actions, and we don't want to be held accountable for them either. The mindset is, it's all over. It's every mega billionaire for himself. That's the mindset with a capital M. And the book goes through a whole bunch of different ways that the mega rich want to survive the wrecking of the world that they themselves did. From uploading their consciousness into an AI, to leaving the planet, to successfully traveling on an environmental ship out in space, no destination involved, or maybe a base on the moon or a base on Mars, to the far more likely thing, which is isolated bunkers, escape hatch bug-out bunkers that they can go to when the whole world ends. And a number of these people have been planning and stocking those bunkers for a long time, well over a decade. So when you see maybe a cable news show about how, some retired insurance salesman has a timeshare on a bunker that's barely below ground somewhere out in Arizona, and he shows you proudly around his barely inhabitable little tube and shows you that he has 6 months worth of food, don't judge what this book is about by paltry efforts like that. We're talking about people who have fortified and stocked whole islands of their own and have been doing so for years. They have the ability to live out the rest of their natural lives on the stores that they have set aside. In fact, that is the typical yardstick among people who have 7 or 8 zeros at the end of their bank account, is not whether or not they have such a place, but whether or not the estimates of what they have to live on, so stored electricity, drinkable water, preserved food, all that sort of stuff, that their yardstick for success is whether or not the planned length of time all of those supplies will outlast the actuarial chart of how long they're likely to live. They don't care. They just want to live out their days without being responsible for the 99.9% wealth gap that they themselves exacerbated, to the fracturing of society that their technology or their social media products. When you see someone like that, a figure like that, a Bill Gates figure, he has at least one place like that. He'll deny it. And if he doesn't deny it, some of them don't, like mega Hollywood stars will admit that they have sort of a bug-out place to go, but it's not the real one. There's one that they don't talk about, but they have spent a huge amount of money to stock it against the upcoming event, the upcoming end of civilization as we know it, because they want to survive it. And the book is punchy. It's very, very good. It's very, very thought. It will make you mad, but it's very, very good. I wish that it had been longer. I understand why it couldn't be, because I would guess that finding sources who are willing to talk about this in our age of instant leaking must have been hard to do. But the impression, you get the unavoidable impression in the course of the book that anyone who has a huge amount of money has invested it in this kind of thing, a way to escape from what's coming. So it's fascinating, but pretty disturbing as well. Okay, then we have a paperback. I think this is also going to be a paperback original. This is from the MIT Press. This is Selfie Democracy by Elizabeth Losh, the new digital politics of disruption and insurrection. Do we have a date on this? Oh, okay, this came out on August 1st, so this is out already. Smartphones and other digital devices seem to give us a direct line to politicians. But is interacting with presidential tweets really a manifestation of digital democracy? In this book, the author examines the unintended consequences of politicians' digital strategies, from the Obama campaign's pioneering construction of an open communication, an online community, to Trump's Twitter dominance. So I wonder if this pub sheet and maybe this book was written before Trump was banned from Twitter. She finds that politicians who use digital media appeal to the same fantasies of digital connection, access, and participation peddled by Silicon Valley. Meanwhile, smartphones and social media don't enable participatory democracy so much as they incentivize citizens to perform attention-getting acts of political expression. I don't know that that's 100% true. Politicians, some of them anyway, very much pay attention if they get a viral response to something on Twitter. They very much pay attention to that. I'm interested in reading what this author has to say. The author explores presidential rhetoric casting digital media as a tool of democracy, describes the conflation of gender and technology that contributed to the Hillary Clinton defeat in 2016, chronicles the Biden campaign's early digital stumbles in 2020, and recounts the TikTok campaign that may have spoiled a Trump rally. She shows that although Obama and Trump may seem diametrically opposed in both style and substance, it's not that they may seem that. It's not that they may seem diametrically opposed. It's that they are diametrically opposed. They don't seem it. She shows that although Obama and Trump may seem diametrically opposed in both style and substance, they both used mobile digital media in ways that reshaped the presidency and promised a new kind of digital democracy. Well, so what though? I would have phrased that differently. It's basically saying that she shows that although Obama and Trump seem very different, it turns out they both have two opposable thumbs. The two things are unconnected. I don't know why you would do that. Just stress the similarities in their tactics, if there are any, without saying that they may be similar. Obama used data and digital media to connect to citizens without intermediaries. Trump followed this strategy to its most extreme conclusion. What were the January 6th insurrectionists doing as they live-streamed themselves and their cohorts attacking the Capitol, but practicing their own brand of selfie democracy? Okay, well, keep in mind, it's just a pub sheet, right? The book sounds intensely intelligent. But if you are using physical force to stop the ratification of a vote because you don't like that your guy lost, you are not participating in any kind of democracy, selfie or otherwise. But this is just the pub sheet. The book sounds really, really, really interesting. And this is a thing that we're going to have to grapple with anyway, and not just in America. So the more books about it, the better. Yeah, so this came out, this comes out at the beginning of September. And this will be a paperback original, a $25 paperback original. So it will look just like this. Great. Okay. Well, like I say, it's a subject that's going to come up. I don't know if I'll argue with the author, but oftentimes in a book like this, that improves the reading experience for me. That makes it more fun to argue with the author. Let's see here. Then we have an October release, so this is not for a while yet. This is by Erica Hanekell, and it is called Orchid Muse, A History of Obsession in 15 Flowers. So I gather a book about orchids. Do I have a... No. Okay, no sheet here. We'll just read it from the back. Orchids, the epitome of floral beauty, have long inspired poetry, adventure, art, and scientific discovery. In Orchid Muse, historian and home orchid grower Erica Hannekel brings together fascinating tales of the orchid smitten throughout history. What about any of you? I automatically want to know, are any of you orchid smitten? Do any of you grow orchids? Nero Wolf's the only character I can think of who grew orchids. Consider, for instance, Empress Eugenie and Queen Victoria, the two most powerful women in the 19th century Europe, who shared a passion for... Okay, all right. Who shared a passion for... Oh, and then we have the Linnaean classification. Let's see if I can do it. Coleogeny cristata. It's the Linnaean classification for the orchid family. John Roebling, builder of the Brooklyn Bridge, and Raymond Burr, the actor famed for playing Perry Mason, cultivated thousands of orchids, including introducing captivating new and unusual species, transporting the reader from hazardous Amazonian jungles to the seedy dime museum of the Gilded Age New York's Tenderloin, from the glories of the palace gardens of Chinese Empress Qiqi to the island of Bourbon, where the vanilla orchid thrives. Orchid Muse spans the world, exploring our enduring fascination with these exquisite flowers. Oh, I wonder if there's a whole chapter on Raymond Burr. I have longed so much for a long biography of Raymond Burr, an utterly fascinating figure, who, as far as I know, has never had more than just a really dumb biography. Okay, so this is illustrated all throughout. We don't have this advanced copy doesn't have an inset of color photos. So maybe this whole thing will be illustrated in color throughout rather than that. I like that better. It's more expensive, but the key to making a book like that, where the color illustrations are all throughout instead of an inset in the middle, the key to keeping down the impact of that higher expense is to print fewer copies. Print fewer copies of the book. No more than 1,000 people in the United States are going to want this book in hardcover. So 1,000 copies plus the copies that you send out to libraries. You don't need any more than that. If somebody wants a copy, they can order it. If enough people want it, they can drive it into a second printing. But anyway, those of you who are interested in flowers, specifically orchids, are orchids harder to grow than normal flowers? Do they require a lot of equipment or a lot more attention? Are they not beginner flowers? Very curious to know. I imagine I'll learn everything there is to know about them in this book. And then let's finish up with a batch of hardcovers, and then we'll be done. So this next one is by a historian that I know and really like. This is Ronald Spector, and this is his new book, A Continent Erupts. Decolonization, Civil War, and Massacre in Post-War Asia, 1945 to 1955. With this book, acclaimed military historian Ronald Spector recounts the harrowing history of the conflicts that swept Asia during the decade following World War II. This author wrote a book called Eagle Against the Sun, which is a terrific account of America versus Japan during World War II. Spector draws on letters, diaries, and international archives to provide, for the first time, a comprehensive analysis of the little-known but decisive events that determined the fate of the continent. Far from being simply offshoots of the Cold War, as they have often been portrayed, these shockingly violent conflicts forever changed the shape of Asia and the world as we know it. After World War II, East and Southeastern Asia quickly became the most turbulent regions on the globe. Within weeks of the famous surrender ceremony on board the USS Missouri, civil war, communal clashes, and insurgency engulfed the continent, from Southeast Asia to the Soviet border. Okay, but and it's a fascinating subject, and I want to read this author on the subject, but it's not the first time. Wasn't there a big book on this subject about 30 years ago? I should ask David Murphy. I could swear that I read a book on this subject about 30 years ago. But it doesn't matter, because this is a great historian, and like we're told, he consults all sorts of primary documents that probably weren't consulted for that earlier book, if I'm remembering that earlier book correctly. So this comes out on August 23rd, which is next Tuesday. So really, really, really soon. And if you are interested in this sort of thing, I know a few of you have an abiding interest in Southeast Asian history and decolonization history and that sort of thing. This is an author not to miss, so right around the corner. Then we have, let's see here, this is by Jonathan Kirshner, and it is An Unwritten Future, Realism and Uncertainty in World Politics. And this is from the folks at Princeton University Press. I don't want to block the bean there. She's peacefully sleeping. This comes out in late September, An Unwritten Future, which offers a fresh reassessment of classical realism, an enduring approach to understanding crucial events in the international political arena. The author identifies the fundamental flaws of classical realism's would-be successors and shows how this older, more nuanced and sophisticated method for studying world politics better explains the formative events of the past. Kirshner also reveals how this approach is ideally equipped to comprehend the vital questions of the present, such as the implications of China's rise, the ways that social and economic change alter the balance of power and the nature of international conflict, and the consequences of the end of the U.S.-led post-war order for the future of world politics. Okay, fairly heady stuff, but again, I mean, this interests me, but I can imagine there being people watching who will be more interested in this than I am. Now you know, this is coming out at the end of September. So if your library doesn't have a copy, if your school isn't going to get one, or if you want to pre-order it at your bookstore, you can. Okay, this next one I think we've seen before, but this is a tough subject. This is a brutal subject, but that's all the more reason that it should get books, right? That's all the more reason that we should read about it and keep reading about it. This comes out in early September, September the 6th, and it is by James M. Scott, and it's called Black Snow. Curtis LeMay, The Firebombing of Tokyo and the Road to the Atomic Bomb. Those of you who don't know the details of the firebombing of Tokyo, well, you're going to get all those details in this book, obviously, but you might want to, Wikipedia or Google it first. Just don't Google images. But you might want to Google some of the details to get an idea of the sheer scope of what happened here, because it's mind-staggering and stomach-churning. Let's see here. The world stands horrified at Russia's indiscriminate bombing and killing of civilians in the war against Ukraine. But civilian casualties have long been one of the tragedies of modern warfare, and one of the most horrific episodes was carried out by none other than the United States in the firebombing of Tokyo during World War II. I would argue that most of the examples in the 20th century were carried out by the United States. Just after midnight on March 10, 1945, nearly 300 American B-29s rained incendiary bombs down on the Japanese capital of Tokyo. The bombs created a nearly 2,800-degree inferno that vaporized 16 square miles of the city and killed more than 100,000 people. The attack was so horrifyingly effective that Major General Curtis LeMay, who directed the mission, said, quote, "If we lose, we'll be tried as war criminals." The attack marked a major and deadly shift in American military strategy and formed the moral and strategic framework for the use of the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki just months later. So that's what the subtitle means here. That's what it means, the road to the atomic bomb. It's not the road to the building of the atomic bomb. It's the road to participatory democracy led by civilians instead of the military, making a conscious, cold decision to use this kind of total warfare, scorched earth, literally, warfare, on cities full of women and children, cities full of the old and infirm. So this is the first book on the bombing of Tokyo in a while that I have read. I don't know that there's much in the way of new or declassified information, but it'll all depend. It wouldn't matter anyway. It will all depend on how the author does it. Who is this author? Do I know this author? He's the author of, most recently, of a book called Rampage and a book called Target Tokyo, which was a Pulitzer Prize finalist. Okay, I think I might have read one of those too, but I'll definitely be reading this. That's coming right up. And then we'll finish with Mark Kurlansky, who's an author a lot of you probably know. And he has a rather odd-looking book. His new book is rather odd. It's called Big Lies, From Socrates to Social Media. And it's fully illustrated by Eric Zeltz, and it's an odd size. It's not a normal. See if I line these up on the corner there. It's not a normal sized hardcover. It's shorter and wider, square. Maybe to facilitate the artwork. Maybe that's the case. You've got artwork all throughout here, not just photos, but also we have a lot of this, a lot of these cartoony insets, but also, yeah, I just caught a glimpse of one there. Also, partial and full page comic strips. So I've got a sheet on this thing. What have we got here? This comes out in early September. Okay, so a lot of these things are coming out in the first week of September. Best-selling author Mark Kurlansky explores how big lies distort history, deny science, fuel hate, and destabilize the world in his new book. This engaging illustrated guide for teen and adult readers is part history and part how-to manual for seeing through big lies and thinking critically. That explicit mention of teen, of the part of the market here, is for a younger audience. But I don't know any teen who needs a book like this to look like this. Teens aren't. They're a lot sharper than people give them credit, and a lot more aware. They're gonna, if this looks this way, full of cartoony inserts and, you know, frankly childish imagery, if it looks this way because the people at TVS Media Group thought that's the part that should appeal to teens, I don't know of a teen reader who isn't going to feel condescended to. So let's hope the design comes from someplace else. In the age of social media, big lies travel faster than ever, but the lies themselves are the same old slurs and conspiracy theories they've always been. This book soars through history, starting with the noble lies of Socrates and Plato, to the big lies of Stalin and Hitler and their terrible consequences, and the reckless lies of contemporary demagogues. Okay, well, this is according to the sheet here, this is only going to be $23. So a big hardcover illustrated book is going to be less money than that trade paperback we saw of Selfie Democracy. That's not an industry in turmoil. I don't know what is, but that is coming out soon. Big Lies, all about the lies all throughout history by an author who's done a lot of books that people have read. No idea why it looks the way it does. I'll have to figure out the why and wherefore of that when I wind my way through it, which I will be doing soon. So there you go. We'll do a little pyramid here that might block the beam. We don't want to do that. We've got Big Lies by Mark Kurlansky. We've got Black Snow about the firebombing of Tokyo. We've got An Unwritten Future about realism. A Continent Erupts about the fighting in Southeast Asia that just went right on happening after World War II concluded. Orchid Muse about orchid mania with a few people standing in as examples of types. We've got Selfie Democracy, The Survival of the Richest. Let's see here. Memorandum from the Iowa Cloud Appreciation Society, a novel. And Anne Braden Speaks, an anthology of her writing, which can be very good, but does not really capture her voice. At least the pieces of writing that I remember reading were a lot more buttoned down and a lot less memorable. There'll be a lot in here that I haven't read, though, so maybe that won't be true all across the board. But anyway, those are some new arrivals for you. Some stuff that's, out now or immediately on the horizon, so for you to jot down. I thought it might be of interest to you. These sorts of things are always of interest to me. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.